Could you tell me more about your childhood?
In Mexico, it was nice. I was a really crazy kid, doing always crazy stuffs and be curious about everything. So I did a lot of stuff, child things.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And you attended school there itself?
Yeah, I studied architecture.
In the school?
In the university. Yeah.
No, in the school. We are talking about your school days.
Schools like primary, secondary, that stuff.
So were you interested in art in those days?
Yeah, since I was in the secondary, I started getting taking all this art class. Most of people took engineering stuff or mechanic stuff, and I always took art class, drawing or painting. So I was 11 years old, and I always wanted to be an architect. So I started doing artistic stuff. Yeah.
So what kind of arts did you used to make back then?
It was mostly drawings about Mario Bros or that kind of stuff. That at that time was really known for kids, So mostly that, and different techniques that I learned in the secondary school.
Do you remember any particular day or any particular events that was really intriguing for you to go into arts?
Oh, intriguing things. I remember once I was hit by a car. That was a really big event for me. But I don't know if it has something to do with that I am being an artist or not. But it changed a lot my life because I at that point I could just go out and play on the streets with my friends, and then I was not allowed to go in out because I was hit by a car and I was 8 years old. So my life changed a lot, but I don't know if it had something to do with art. I'm not sure, but maybe yes. Who knows?
But you needed to sit back in home.
Yeah.
Due to the injury.
Yeah. Or it's most that I was not allowed to go out, so I was more in my house doing other stuff like drawing or reading, or yeah.
In your family, did somebody appreciate the artworks that you did when you were a child, while you were growing up?
Yeah, my parents always support me in everything. I played also football, and they support me in football, and they always motivate me to do art stuff. It's more my father that is more artistic than my mother, so he always support that part of me. Yeah.
So after your school, you went directly to college in order to study architecture?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was it like?
It was really nice because that was a really good school. Because normally I grew up in a poor neighborhoods. So the schools I was before going to college was poor people that I always interact. My friends all were poor people, and I was more in a half medium, how do you call it? Medium standard people. And then I went to this college where it's just rich people. For me it was a big shock, and I never adapt really. So I started being a really solitary person and do a lot of readings and paintings. And I learned how to draw perspective, and we have this class that we draw for 4 hours. They take us to some place and we sit just there drawing people or buildings, mostly buildings. So I learned really well there, and I was really good drawing. There was 3 or 4 people that draw really well, and I was one of them. Because what it was incredible, most of architects doesn't know how to draw. So it was a little shocking for me, as an architect you should know, but now everything is in the computer, so you really don't need to draw, So times change.
So back then, while you were in college days, while you were studying architecture, did you think that I'll be better as an artist rather than the architect?
Yeah.
Or how did it plop up in your mind?
The problem was that at that moment I thought that architecture is an art at the beginning, but it is not in reality, you know, because it becomes more technical stuff. So everything is technical and everything is in the computer, so you pass your day, your life sitting in front of a computer just drawing stuff, and the art just disappear. And so I was there because I thought it was more artistic stuff, but let's say 90% of the time it is more drawing and doing technical stuff or writing reports, or you know. And at some point I realized that that was not what I wanted to do, but it was later on, like
Did you pass your architectural exam?
Yeah.
Are you an official architect?
Oh yeah. I did a thesis because at that point you have to do a thesis for I don't know, it took me like 6 months. Architecture school in Mexico where I did it, it's 5 years, and then you have 1 more year or 6 more months to do your thesis. And I did my thesis and I had this like I don't know, I graduated with how do you call it, really good grades and honor mention for my thesis. It was a theoretical thesis back then because I like philosophy and all that stuff, so I like to read and write about that stuff that is always linked with art. So I thought that at that point my mind just opened to all this world that is philosophical and it's always influence art or your art vision. So at that point start that thought that is really important in my life.
So that you graduated?
In 2001. Yeah, I'm an old guy.
And then after that?
After that,
did you pursue any kind of job related to architecture?
All the time. I never ever in my life worked in something else. I've just been working for 15 years as an architect until I quit my job 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, 2018. So for 15 years I just work as an architect. So I never had another kind of job.
Did you stay back there in Mexico or you migrated to Canada?
Yeah, I migrated to Canada in 2008.
Okay.
So then I start also working as an architect. So yeah, most with that.
What do you think? I mean, architecture is a more technical subject to study, and art is more, lucid to begin with.
More
lucid to begin with.
Okay, lucid.
Yeah. Like a flow.
Mm-hmm. For me. Or in general.
In general.
Yeah.
People say is architecture is more complicated course, and you need to study a lot.
Mm.
And being an artist, you don't need to study a lot.
Yeah, I don't
Is it
think.
true for you?
No, I don't think. I don't think people get that stuff, but it's true because the job of an artist is really different, because you don't see let's say when you have to do an architecture, for example, you have to study a lot of stuff like structure and space and distribution, but it's really clear when you are working. And in art it's not that clear because the hard work you do in living your life. Like you go out, you meet people, if you drink, you have fun, you read, you go to an art exhibition, you go to a concert, and that's what is the hard work in art. That is, you cannot see that someone is like working if he's just, you think is having fun or traveling or something, no? But in fact is that who nourishes the art, who give you the ideas, and that's the way you study, and seeing another artist and doing research about what you want to do. If you want to do portraits, you go and look for artists who do portraits the way you like. So that kind of things people normally don't see it like you are working, but is the hard part of the job that is really funny for me. For me, I don't think that I'm working. I'm just having fun doing things I like. So yeah.
Like in Canada or Mexico, did you visit any kind of art exhibition?
Oh, a lot, all the time. I go to the museums all the time in Europe too. I love go every museum I can go. I go in any city, any country I travel. I like to travel a lot, and I love to go to the museums. So I visit a lot of art exhibition and small galleries too, because normally new ideas came from people that exhibit in small galleries at the beginning. They are not these big artists, but they have nice and good ideas, and you always learn something going to a gallery.
Do you have any peculiar moment that you remember when you were an architect and visiting the galleries? Any peculiar moments or anything that you can remember that kept your head moving or that kept your mind moving, that I can do this kind of works in the coming days? Do you remember anything like that?
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to Europe. That was, I think, 2001. Yeah, 2000 or 2001. And I visited the Musée du Louvre. And it's the first time I saw these Monet paintings. And I was impressed. I never seen something more beautiful in my life. At that point, I was really impressed. I didn't knew Monet. And I just saw the painting, and I was just, my body just felt happy to see all that beauty, the colors and the bright and the strokes, and I was just so impressed. And at some point I just say, I want to do that at some point in my life. So I remember that moment now more than 20 years ago.
So back then, when you were an architect, you used to get canvas and used to work in it?
Not that much. It was more drawing than painting, but always my favorite medium is watercolor. I always do. I've been doing watercolor for more than 20 years because I learned in the architecture college. So that technique is always been part of my life, because it's a technique that is normally people don't understand watercolor, because watercolor is not for everybody. It's for people who have certain kind of personality, because it's really hard and it's really spontaneous, and you deal with all these things that you never can control, because it's alive, it's water. It's not like doing a oil canvas or acrylic canvas, where you can just paint over layer by layer or over the layer, and if you make a mistake or whatever you think is a mistake, you can correct. And in watercolor is never, is when once it's done forever, and I like that feeling that you have to do it in a good way just in the first time you try. So I love that in watercolors.
For an artist, what is important? The idea of doing an art, or the hands should be more perfect? What do you think?
Well,
the idea or the hands?
It depends of everybody, because in my case I love the idea, but now I think that something is my perspective, that I don't like when contemporary art is just about the idea. No, it changed with the time when it became the idea the most important thing, and the art, the work of art is like secondary stuff. So what you're really selling is the idea. And for me, I love the piece of art like something beautiful in my mind, in my perspective, because beauty is subjective, but I love when it's aesthetically nice to my eye. It can be abstract or figurative or whatever, but I love when something, the object, is aesthetically beautiful. It's not just the idea or the words that just passed, So for me, both things are important, but aesthetically the object for me is more important.
Could you tell, or could you shed more light on what kind of works you used to do back in Canada?
Okay, comparative to now, I think the biggest difference is that in Canada I was studying, so I was just exploring different techniques and different ways of doing, just exploring. I was not having this unique idea of a project that I just developed until the end, that is what I'm doing here, and I start doing in Barcelona last year. So in Canada it was more this exploration of doing, like, for example, abstract paintings or trying to do different kind of portraits, because I love doing portraits. So it was more like exploring all these techniques and different kinds of achieve a goal that I liked, you know. And now it's more like I focus on my idea, that is more like meeting people and try to do something about this connection with people. So I think it's really different now.
How did the change came while you were exploring and once you made the project?
I think the change came when I was in Barcelona, because I started living really like an artist. Because in Canada I was more living like a student, you know. You go.
Architect.
Because I started studying art in a college in Canada. So this visual art college is more like this student life, you know. You wake up, you go to the school, you do your art at the school, maybe at your house, you use the workshop at the school. But in Barcelona was more like I living on my own as an artist and meeting people like a normal life, and the ideas come with that, you know. You meet people on the streets. So the first idea was just have this connection with people who lives on the streets, you know, the homeless people. So this idea start with that, because it's people you never look at. It's like if they are not there, or you don't care about that people. So I start like question myself about this, why these people doesn't exist for me, or why I don't care about them. And I realized that I have all this prejudice that came from the society that I inherited, you know, that these people doesn't matter just because they are there and they don't do something good for the society. That's our point of view. But when you talk with that people, you realize that it's people that have ideas and feelings, and they are human beings, and they have a big part in the society because they are there and they see everything that happens. Really, because when you are concentrated on your day-to-day life, you just go to your job or to the school, or you don't really see everything, the perspective of every angle of the society. And they do, because they are there looking and interacting with people all the time. And you know, you have your selected interactions, you know. You just go meet your friends, or meet someone you want to meet, or just go to the school, or, you know, and they know they are interacting with everybody. And so I want to try that angle. So for me, it's that big difference. In Canada, I was just living a normal life, going to the school and meeting my friends and all that stuff. And here I try to meet with that people, and I realized that my prejudice was really that prejudice, because they are normal people who have really good ideas, and that sometimes the circumstance lead them there, which sometimes is sad, you know. But for me, they are more free than a lot of people that live a normal life, just chained in all this day-to-day life, going to the job that they don't like, or living this life that they don't like because they have to pay the bills, or all that stuff, you know. And for me, it was really shocking ideas. All this, like, am I really free? That's what, for me, that's the biggest question in my life. If all the decisions I take, I'm a really free person when I took this decision, or I was really manipulated for the circumstance or for someone else. So, well, that questions came at that point.
Let's just explore more on what was the turning point like. You were earning good back in Canada as an architect, but what happened 4 or 5 years ago that you switched into art?
well, a lot of things happens like in life. I was in this middle age crisis when you have to take the most important decision in your life, or you continue with your shitty life that at that point you don't like for some reason. It doesn't matter the reason, it's just you don't like it for some reason, and you have to decide you continue with this for maybe the 20 next years of your life, or you change drastically. And I'm that kind of person who changed, but really in a really drastic way. Like I have this and now I just completely let everything and just try to do something that maybe it's gonna work, maybe it's not gonna work. So most of people thought that it was a really stupid thing because I just quit my job, really good job, have good money, and I had this mortgage because with my ex we bought this apartment. So nobody does that kind of stuff, you know. If you think in a normal way, like it's not logical to do that. But I just thought, you only have one life. If you don't do it right now, I won't do it ever. So I don't know. I split with my ex and I sell the apartment and I quit my job and start studying visual arts in this college in Montreal.
So how was the study like? What were you taught once you went to college to study visual art after so many years gap? What was it like? Was it easier to cope with the problems? Because you already had one problem, that you were leaving your job and everything in order to pursue yet another degree. What was it like?
For me it was not that complicated because I always like to study new stuff. So before doing this art degree, I did a master in urban planning, which it was useless for me. But I always do go to the school and learn some things that I'm curious about. So it was not that big thing because I'm used to go to the schools and meet people, because I think the biggest shock was that there were most of people really young. But I did this certificate. So in the certificate there is all ages, you know, older people than me and younger people than me. But when I started the degree in art, it was just young people, like, you know, 20 years old, and I'm 40 years old, like double. And you feel like, what am I doing here? All the time you question yourself, like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, everybody look at you like, you this old guy, what's he doing here, you know? But at some point they realize that you have something to offer and that you are doing that seriously, and they just accept that. Maybe they agree or not with your ideas or your personality, but they accept that you're doing that in a, let's say, serious way. Because when I decide to do something, I always do it in the most like serious way. It doesn't seem, because I'm not a person that looks like serious, but when I commit to something or with someone, I always do in a serious way, you know. I really do stuff in a thing that is with passion and with all my energy, put it on that. And people see that. It could like or don't like what you do, but they see that you are really invested on that. And I think that's the most important thing, because even if they see me as an old guy, they respect what I do, because I always take subjects, really delicate subjects and complicated subjects on the society. So they see that. And there is another big issue also, that I'm, as an immigrant in Canada, they always see me with all this prejudice that you see as an immigrant person who came from came from Mexico. So they have this idea that you are a macho person, you know, and you or a misogynist person that don't like women. All that prejudice, I like to play with that. And people that they are wrong, or maybe they are right, but they have to see all the angles to judge a person, you know. You cannot just judge like all this country, like you say, you are Mexican, so you have all these things. But no, you are Mexican, but you are a person that is not all that stuff, and not only that stuff. So I don't know, it's a really important thing thing in my art. I think so. My Mexican personality and me emigrating in Canada, I think.
Do you remember any professors who were teaching visual arts and who had motivated you a lot in order to work? Do you remember any incidents in the college?
Yeah, I remember some incidents and motivates me in a good way. I remember this Dutch artist that he teach serigraphy, and I like his vision of art, you know, and he always like accept my ideas, always with critique and trying to help me, and I appreciate that because most of the Canadian artists that are teaching their teachers, they are different, you know, they have another vision, and Canadian vision of art is really different than European vision of art, and I like to meet the different ideas, and I think what motivates me most was that they see me like a, you know, like stranger, you know, because I always had this feeling that they don't appreciate me, and that motivates me more. Like, okay, I have to prove that even if I'm wrong, I'm doing good stuff, you know. And I had that a lot, most in the engraving, all this art printing art that I really love and I really learned there. I didn't knew. I wanted to learn, for example, etching. That is one of my favorite techniques, and I learned all other stuff like lithography or wood carving and serigraphy or print screen, and I discovered all this universe of art prints, and it's just something I love. So even if the professor I had there didn't like me, she was really professional person and knew that I was really motivated in learning that. So I learned a lot with this person that didn't like me, but she was really objective person, you know. Even if she didn't like me, I learned a lot because the technique of art printing is something just beautiful, I know.
So how did you begin to make projects after your completion of the college days? How did you begin to make the projects
in
regarding
art?
art? Yeah.
Well, it's something like, as I told you before, is the idea just came in when you are doing something else, like in a concert or drinking a beer or whatever. And so at some point when I was just coming back to my apartment, I just saw these people on the streets, and I had this idea, and why not doing something with that, with my own prejudice, used to do some art, you know. And I think the most of ideas came like that. For example, I like subjects like feminicides. So in Canada, most of my projects were about these feminicides, because in Mexico there is this Juarez disappearance. So thousands of women disappear every year in Ciudad Juarez or in all Mexico. So it's a really something that struggles me, you know, that I cannot understand how you can live in a society where a woman can disappear and nobody does anything. So for me it's really shocking, and it was more shocking when I discovered that in Canada happened that too. And always happened to indigenous people, women, or poor people that normal people don't give a shit about them. So that was a really shock for me, like, wow, what? In a developed country these things can happen too. And I like the idea that as a man you are not like welcome to talk about that kind of stuff, you know, because feminicides normally are perpetuated by men. So you as a man, even if you have something to do, they are always like, why are you talking about this if it's a women's subject? And I like that idea that they don't like me doing that stuff, like they see me as a macho person, like Latino, you know, and I like that kind of subject. So that the subject came just like that. For example, another example is the student disappearance in Mexico. All these 43 students that disappeared in 2016, I think, that all this thing had to do something with the government. And for me it was like, what? The government, the army took them and killed them. It's just what? Like, and nobody is allowed to talk about this stuff publicly because the you know, all the real story is always hidden in some point. So if artists don't take that kind of subjects and put it to the public, who is gonna do that? Because normally journalists like you are not allowed to do that. You know, you have to follow these rules, or you have to. The government always put the line that things you cannot say. But as an artist, I don't give a fuck them about this line. You know, my job, if you can say job, is to put on the public, on the eye public, these subjects, and they can do whatever they want to do with this. But the idea that just they can see that happens and that exists in that society, and you can just then do something or nothing about it, that's your choice. Like, ignore that this happened, or just start questioning why this is happening in this society, and I don't want to look at it, because you, inside of you, you know that these things happens, you know. You just don't want to look at them because that troubles you, because you live in a comfort zone that you don't want to disturb, you know. And as an artist, my job is disturb your comfort zone, or for me, it's the way I see that, you know. Because artists can see it in a different way, you know, they have their own vision, but for me, my vision is disturb your comfort zone. So what?
So is it the first time that you are having residency in any country?
Yeah, it's the first time I try, because I was studying and I have this big like rupture with Canada. Like, I didn't feel welcome there anymore. And since I sell my apartment, I don't have a place to live, so I decided if I have to pay a rent, why not travel to another country, live and experience different cultures, and do some art project about that. So that's why I decided to start this art residency, and it's the first I start here in Nepal.
So among many countries, among many continents, you chose Asia. And you chose Nepal as your first destination for the art residency. Why?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I don't even know. I don't have any clue about it. It's just I like to follow my instinct, and sometimes I just, at some point I just want to go to Tibet. But going to Tibet is really complicated, and I think, well, Nepal is really close to Tibet, and one day I was just talking with this Tibetan woman that sell stuffs in Canada, and she told me that you can take a bus from Kathmandu to Lhasa to go to Tibet. That was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I said, well, I will try to do that, but then all this COVID shit happened, and the frontier is closed, the border is closed, so you cannot go. But anyway, I decided to come here, and I'm happy because there is a lot of shit happening here. It's a crazy country, but as a Mexican, I'm used to all that kind of stuff. It's just here is in a higher level, you know. All the same shit that happened in Mexico happened here, but it's just bigger, you know. More traffic, more crazy stuff, and I just think that is a good stuff, you know. Because people are nice. Also, that I realized that too. That is good people and bad people, but most of people here are nice in general, you know. But yeah, that's the main reason. There is not really a specific reason, you know.
So, did you know prior that there exists a country named Nepal?
Yeah, of course, because I've always been this curious person, and I learned from my grandfather that you have to know the world, not only your country. So I learned a lot of different countries and the capitals and where they are in the world, and that's really important because that shows that you have a global vision of the world, not just that you are centered on your own country, on your own city, that you know that there is something else beyond that country, and that opens your mind. And so you knowing where a country is that you are open that country exists and that people exist. If not, you are just centered on your own country and you don't know that everything else exists, you know. So I knew that Nepal exists, that the Everest was in Nepal, and that Kathmandu exists, that Pokhara exists. So I knew all that, but I didn't know how it was until I came.
As a person with an artistic mind, what was the most striking thing for you once you landed in Nepal? What was the first thing that amazed you?
I think
in a good way, in a bad way.
Yeah, I think in the chaos that people live here, that is like order, chaos, you know. People just function like this, like a clock, but a clock that is assembled in a weird way, you know. Everything works perfectly, but you don't know how, you know. Like it's this big energy that make that everything flows, but you don't understand the basis of that. How is that happened? You don't understand that, and it's okay. And I like that because it's like just people get in balance or in harmony in a real weird way. And I like that because that is really artistic stuff. Because in art is all about that, you know, things that you don't understand. You just see an image or an object and you think that you understand, but most of the time you don't even have any clue what it's about. And that's good because even the artists don't know about it, you know. You can have your own interpretation, but yeah, you don't really know for sure.
So during your 6 months time as a residential artist here in Nepal, you've been working with so many projects, you've been making so many portraits, and how did the idea came into your mind that you're going to exhibit or that you're going to work on portraits rather than the works that you used to do back there in your country?
Well, in fact, it came since I was in Barcelona because I always want to do portraits. For me, is the thing that motivates me the most or inspires me the most is people, not things or buildings or landscape. It's people, and the best way for me to show that is doing portraits. So I always like people who do these psychological portraits like Francis Bacon or Lucian Freud. That kind of portraits I love because it's not just showing one person that is just sitting there posing or someone you meet on the street. It's just trying to show the personality of someone in a painting, which is, or in a picture, which is really complicated. And I just think I want to do that, and I have to start now because it's something that is really complicated and you just can do it meeting people and practicing. So I start just practicing doing portraits or drawing of people, and now I'm doing this like acrylic portraits now.
During your stay here, you also got chance to meet so many artists, Nepali artists. And is the idea of an artist different back there in Barcelona or in Canada or is it the same in Nepal?
I think is almost the same because normally artist people have one type of personality that is really like universal, I think, because you don't live normally with the rules that one person who go to the office every day from 9 to 8, even if in Nepal is really different. You don't have this working culture that we have in the West, that you go to the office from 9 to 5 or 9 to 7. So this is really different for an artist, because as an artist you are your own boss. You have to deal with all this stuff that is having links with people, your all this web of artists or people who sell art, and you have to be really like a businessman but also an artist, which is really complicated stuff, and I think that kind of personality is universal, and I was surprised that the community of artists here is a really nice way, because they are really close, you know, because I think Nepal, as like Mexico, is a warm country, because in Canada it's more like you are on your own, you know, they don't associate, and here I think it's more like a community. So when you go for an art exhibition, you almost see the same people all the time, you know, in different kind of art exhibition is almost always same people. Even if it's a traditional art exhibition or a contemporary art exhibition, it's almost same community of people who go there, and that's interesting because it means that you help each other to try to survive, because it's a really complicated way of living of art, you know.
You've also visited so many art exhibitions happening here in Nepal. So what was your perception like? What kind of works are the Nepali people doing? And considering yourself as a foreign man coming here to see the artworks, what intrigued you? Or what was the most interesting thing for you?
I think what intrigues me the most is all this traditional culture and the religious thing, because I always have this complicated relationship with religion, no? So people being so religious here, it was a real shock for me that you see it in the art, and for me it's like there is no way you can put these religious things in artwork. It's just like you can do it in a critical way, in my perspective, but not in the way that you are just doing a portrait of a god. And for me that was a really big shock, that people, even young students, do religious art like we did, like, I don't know, 1,000 years ago, you know, or 100 years ago. Same way, you just do this painting of a god, or people doing godship, you know. It's just like, for me it's really shocking, but I try to respect that, but I always see it in a critical way, you know, because it's something that I really don't understand, that art is still that, you know. It can be that, but what is the critical part of art when you are just painting a god? Maybe there is there, but I just not able to see it, you know.
As an artist coming from a foreign land and watching the artworks of Nepal, where do you think the art of Nepal is going to? Is it going to a good place, or is it just going in a slow motion? What do you think about it?
I think more is going in slow motion, and I don't know if at some point is going to go this do this big step, because now I see that start all this contemporary art, but it's not really popular, and I see that people that start with that is have a lot of struggle. You know, I see artists just having a lot of problems selling stuff because people normally, the culture here is they don't buy that kind of art because it's more like critical or contemporary art that doesn't reflect their beliefs or their feelings or what they wanna buy or the aesthetic they have, people here. So I think it's gonna be really, really complicated at some point people start to appreciate that kind of art, because that happens in all the world, not just here, because contemporary art sometimes is just shit, you know, just like sometimes literally is shit. So it's just like you are trying to sell some idea that people don't understand and don't care about it, and here or in the traditional countries it's more complicated. It's complicated everywhere, but I think in countries like Nepal it's more complicated. So I see it's gonna be like take a lot of time.
What do you think could be done to make the scene more better?
It should start having more contemporary art galleries and trying to do more shocking things. And something that I think is really good here, I always see a lot of young people going to the gallery. That is really something really good, because really young people from the secondary or high school interested in art, and I think that's the most important thing. If these people start to look that there is another way of expression, not only the traditional way, they are gonna start like asking questions why this is good and why this is not good, and if I prefer this, I'm gonna try to do something different, you know. And the change starts there, I think so, but it's gonna take a while, but that's a good thing, I think.
Now let's just switch the subject.
Okay.
Let's come back to you.
Okay.
Let's talk about the exhibition that you're going to have in Nepal. Where are you going to have it? From when?
Okay, the exhibition is gonna be in M Cube Gallery, where I'm doing this art residency since September, so more than 4 months being here, and it's gonna start the 20 January until the 1st February. So I'm really excited. It's the first time I do a solo exhibition in this context. Just in the university I've done several exhibitions, but not in this context. So I'm curious, and I try to don't have any expectations, because I see that it's gonna be really hard to sell stuff, but I'm gonna be happy just if people come and appreciate what I do. It's just the...
So what is the title that you've given to the exhibition?
Invisible Interactions, because it's just about this link with people you met and you just pass and don't seem, or it doesn't seem to have any importance in your life. It's like they call it this like a river of faces that you encounter in your life all the time. You encounter people that just passing by all the time, but if you just stop a little and think about it, it's all that people that make you like have your own life, you know, because this interaction with people is what makes you being part of this society, because if not, you will live just isolate. So the project is just about that, all this invisible interaction that we have every time, every day. We interact with a lot of people that we just don't realize that they have an impact in our life, but they have this impact. It can be small or big, but they have always an impact on us.
Any message to the Nepali artists who are struggling here?
Yeah, I just keep trying. I know it's really hard, because Nepali mentality is really closed. They are not really open-minded people, but there is some open-minded people. Most are artists. So I just think that keep trying, because at some point something important is gonna happen, and I hope it's gonna be soon. But yeah, I just keep trying and doing, because they do good stuff, and I've seen a really good artists and everybody trying in a good way, and I think it's nice.